Hey folks, totally not named Dan here, though you can call me that if you want, and today I'm back with my buddy Cutest Link to talk about some new bans in Errata.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so this is the ban in Errata for the 12th of the 5th, according to it. But that's because it's
Nah, it's just
American.
Americans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. First Tuesday of every month they do it, and first Tuesday of this month was the 5th. It's the December ban list.
Oh, yeah.
We have two things banned today. We have Back Alley Haymaker and Capture Evil-Doers.
Two
So
classics.
yeah, we'll talk about Back Alley Haymaker a bit. Back Alley Haymaker, apparently it's going to require a little zooming out, because typically when measuring card usage, foundations dominate the top few slots, because they normally comprise 60 to 70% of most decks.
Yeah.
And this appears to be what they're going to be focusing on. But Back Alley Haymaker has been more popular than any foundation, and therefore, because of that, clearly it must be too good. And
Oh,
they've
maybe.
then said it appears in 50% or more of top cut qualifying decks. Sure.
Right.
Question there is, what percentage of decks use one of those three symbols? If all symbols were being used evenly, it would be about 25%.
I think it's probably going to be higher than 25% because not all symbols are used as much as others.
Yeah.
Like fewer people are playing water.
If we look at all characters, because every character has three symbols, it'll be a bit more than that. I still think 50% is probably an overrepresentation in top cuts. And so actually, yeah, 50% of them are doing well. That's saying something. But I don't know. I still feel like that's a reason to look at the card and see if it's okay. Certainly outside of top cuts, that's not a reason for banning it. In top cuts, it gets a bit more iffy, because that's saying that decks that use it do well.
People use the card, also we have to ban. That seems a bit odd to me.
Yeah, the entire justification is based on the amount the card is used.
So now Rejuvenating Smash, the next highest one, is that going to get banned next month?
I'd be surprised if it didn't, honestly, because Rejuvenating Smash is busted as all hell. But Back Alley Haymaker, less obviously busted. Back Alley Haymaker doesn't say block very easily, draw two cards, heal two. Back Alley Haymaker just says this is a 5 diff that replaces one of your foundations, so it's essentially a 4 diff.
I think what makes it so good is it does decent stuff, but it does a lot of decent stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they printed this as though it was a 5 diff and then put build a foundation on it, which means it's actually better than a 4 diff, and they've given it stats for being okay on a 5. And then on top of that, it has the option to not build and instead draw a card if you want to extend your turn a different way. And on top of that, it has stun too, so you can start a turn with it and potentially tap your opponent out, or at least get part way there.
And it does have EX too, so if you're a big damage character, you can make this your finisher.
Yeah, exactly. It gets through the final damage, it gets through the early damage, it builds a foundation to keep your turn going, it draws a card to keep your turn going, it can do anything you possibly want it to do. And it doesn't do any of those absolutely amazingly, but it doesn't need to because it does all of them well.
Yeah.
That's what this card comes down to. And they haven't said it, but I think the real big deal here, the thing that says actually maybe this did need banning, is keeping Eri safe. Keeping Eri safe is a crap card. Yeah, it's a 0-5, it's some nice stats, and its block isn't terrible, but it does nothing. It just sits there and gets not committed by the opponent one time. Why are people playing that?
Well, you can build it as a 0 diff, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, the two reasons you play this are you can build it as a 0 diff really easily, and it says no to stun one time.
It can't be fixed, it's just better.
It can't be fixed is just better, but people are playing both.
Ah, good point, yeah.
Because stun 2 then becomes actually stun 1 and replace it. And this is the thing. Keeping Eri safe is hate for Back Alley Haymaker, or at least a card that resists Back Alley Haymaker. It's not real hate. It doesn't punish it in any way.
Yeah.
But you can then build with Back Alley Haymaker. So keeping Eri safe has become insanely popular despite being a bad card, just because it deals with the meta and the meta lets you play it more easily.
Huh. I hadn't seen it that way before, yeah.
So with Back Alley Haymaker gone, keeping Eri safe will become a bit less popular. I think there's still plenty of stun around, but it won't be as easy to build, and it won't have as many really popular forms of stun to deal with. So I do think the fact that keeping Eri safe has become a mainstay of basically every deck on Symbol is an indication of the fact that Back Alley Haymaker is too powerful. I think that's the real thing to look at here.
Is that the only problematic stun, really?
It's not the only problematic stun. It's the most prominent problematic stun.
Right.
Because the stun on it is so free. That's Back Alley Haymaker. Next up, we have the second one, Capture Evil-Doers. Capture Evil-Doers is apparently a more complicated topic. Community conversation around the card has been running for a while, and while we were never fond of the NPE it created, especially against characters who put a premium on momentum, its usage compared to other actions and win rates never reached abnormal numbers. So what they're saying here is that the card was never busted, people just didn't like it. NPE being negative player experience.
Right. That's one thing that annoyed me. They use an acronym and don't explain it.
Yeah, they assume everyone reading this knows what everything means and knows all their terminology from across 2 decades.
Yeah. And I've been around for a while, but I still didn't know this.
Okay, I'm familiar with NPE due to the discussions around another character we'll be talking about later. But
If you're not part of the discussion, you're
yeah.
not.
Yeah, if you've not been around for
Following.
past ban discussions, you don't know what this means at all. So, when they say characters who put a premium on momentum in its usage, they mean characters like, say, Mirio, who needs that 1 momentum to do his defensive thing.
I mean, that's not really a reason, because you want to counter characters like Mirio. You want to have an option to do that, right?
Yeah, and that's why I think the card was good to stay in the meta for a time. But the problem was Mirio was also using it to gain that momentum. So it came down to who drew it when.
But if the momentum thing is really the problem, then why does borrowed goods still exist?
I do not know. That was them talking about the first ability. They then mentioned that it found a home mostly in good punch decks that were competitive, but not dominant. So again, they're talking about Mirio, I think, but it was also used in characters like Deku 2. I'll link you to Joda's Deku 2 list in the description down below, because that's a big deal, because he used that repeatedly to clear his card pool and, as he put it, start his turn over again, as long as he could get the momentum. And that's the thing. It's not actually the first ability that's the problem. The first ability is the negative player experience, because it takes away momentum that you might be relying on.
Well, if they care about negative player experience, ban Eraserhead.
Yeah, exactly.
This whole playstyle in card games, right? Cancelling what your opponent does.
And personally, I quite like fighting against Eraserhead because it makes me think about how my deck works in a context of not having the character, which is not something you normally have to do. When it comes to Capture Evil-Doers, they're not mentioning this was made specifically for All Might 1 because he needed that 1 momentum to use his Detroit Smash to gain 3 momentum to do crazy things with his powerful. He now has plenty of other ways to get that momentum. So Capture Evil-Doers is no longer necessary to him. So it's free to go. It's not hurting one character massively. Except, of course, the Ryukyu here. Ryukyu is the real problem. We get a fair way into this massive paragraph from UVS Games before they mention Ryukyu, but Ryukyu is the issue, because Ryukyu, every time she plays a blank card, which most of her cards are, she gets to add a card from her hand to her momentum in addition to drawing. So she has so much momentum just for free, which she can then use to clear her card pool. In addition to that, she has a combo, which is play a blank card, play a card which picks up the blank card, play the blank card again, then use a foundation to pick back up the card that picked up the blank card, play that card again, pick back up the blank card again, play that again. That's 5 attacks in 2 cards. Oh look, 2 cards in card pool, clear them all with Capture Evil-Doers.
Oh no.
Oh look, start turn over after having thrown 5 attacks. All the while she's filtering her hand and gaining more momentum.
Yeah.
Ryukyu is not okay in general. If they print more support for her, she will be absolutely busted. But the thing is, with Capture Evil-Doers, she was absolutely busted already.
But is a character really reason enough to ban a card that's not related to character?
Well, what it comes down to is either Capture Evil-Doers had to go or Ryukyu had to go. And I guess they didn't want rid of Ryukyu, because the two were an absolute problem together.
Right.
Basically, Ryukyu said, if you let me go to turn 3 so I have enough foundations, there is no way you can stop me. It became either you kill turn 2 or you just don't live. And that's kill turn 2 against somebody who has a lot of good blocks and draws off every single one of them. So yeah, that is the issue here. It was definitely time to ban something. I think Capture Evil-Doers did need to go, but there is definitely an argument that Ryukyu still needs going, because Ryukyu does impact future design space.
Yeah, she's new Quan Chi.
In a way. I mean, I don't know if I'd go as far as Quan Chi, but there are certainly some characters who have done the same sort of thing and been banned for the same sort of thing in the past. Likewise, Unwavering Slash was banned for the same thing in the past, in that it just made it so free to build assets, and so it limited asset design space.
Right.
But that's all of the bans. We then have an Errata list. Almost everything on this list is just we changed gain X applause counters to add X applause counters to your character so that people know where the counters go.
Right.
So we can ignore Jiro 2, Jiro's bass or bass, I am a hero 2, I won't back down, tasty riff, dance routine, and soulful rendition. That's all that's changed on them. They just now work the same way other counter cards worked before.
I mean, what's the point of clarifying it after you've printed the cards? This is a problem for the average player, right? The average player doesn't know what the errata is, they just see what's on the cards.
Yeah, it's great for UVS Ultra, but it does nothing for the average player. That said, though, it still worked before, it's just clearer now.
Yeah.
Twirling Needle, however, is a real errata that changes gameplay. The static text used to read, this attack is always considered the first attack you have played this turn. And there was some confusion over what that did and didn't work with. It worked with Toga 3's ability, and it was meant to work with Toga 3's ability. It was not, as it turns out, meant to work with Instant Explosive Release. Because with Instant Explosive Release, it meant if your first attack or any Twirling Needles hit this turn, Instant Explosive Release can go to Momentum on Resolution, which was just a bit too good.
I guess so, yeah.
There was also a crazy combo in Retro, but that was only in Retro, so nobody cared about that.
That's true, yeah.
So this card has been changed to, you may play enhance abilities during this attack as though this card is the first attack you've played this turn. Makes it a lot clearer what it works with, except it means that it doesn't work with anything. If it said only playable if this is your first attack, it would work, but Toga specifically says enhance, no cost, if this is the first attack you've played this turn, as part of the effect. So she can play the ability, regardless of whether it's her first attack, and this new static only changes her ability to play the ability. When the ability resolves, it will still check if it's the first attack and go, nope, it's not.
I guess they could fix it by making that a cost, but it's not obvious how you would word that.
Well, the problem is there are a few other cards that work the same way Toga does, so you actually need Twirling Needle to work with Toga's wording, not to errata every card that could possibly sound the same as her.
Yeah.
My attempt at this, you'll see here. Please ignore the fact that this is Togemon. I made this render for something else and just changed the wording last minute. This is enhance abilities you play during this attack, consider it the first attack you've played this turn. So that affects the ability, not the ability to play the ability, but actually I think it affects both. That would work. The wording they've come up with doesn't. You should play this ability as though it works with Toga, because it is clearly intended to work with Toga, but you should also tell UVS games that they are wrong and it does not. As written.
Yeah.
That's it for the actual ban and errata updates for this month.
So the erratas were, let's clarify a bunch of things and make one thing less clear.
Yes, they actually were.
Got to balance out the clearness.
Yeah. While we're here, I would like to go over a few other things, because Jasco, who they were back then, I believe, because they've only recently become UVS games, said with the release of this set, they were going to be bringing back spiritual successors to a banned card. And it's not the first time we've seen that. Go Beyond, for example, is a spiritual successor to When the Moon Comes Over the Mountain. It only has one of When the Moon Comes Over the Mountain's abilities, and it is heavily restricted to only work with set 1 characters, to need momentum, and stuff like that. It is not a good card. Nobody plays Go Beyond, but it is technically a spiritual successor to When the Moon Comes Over the Mountain. This set...
They've restricted it a bit too much, definitely.
Yeah. This set, we'd get 1, they said. We've actually had a whole lot more. So first up is Amphibious. Amphibious was a 1-diff, 5-check, once per turn. As an enhance, if a card's left your card pool, you can ready this. We now have that with a slightly better block, a 2 mid block rather than a 3, but it's on a 3-diff in Team Player. Team Player does, however, have a second ability, which is you can discard a card to give your ally or water attack +1/+1, which, that's nice. But realistically, you're probably playing this for the fact that it's a 3 difficulty Amphibious.
I guess so. Is that enough to fix it, you think?
3 difficulty is more than enough to fix it. I think this card would have been reasonable on a 2.
Oh, wow.
The 1 diff just made it way too cheap, but I think on a 2 it would have been fine. Then we have Unwavering Slash itself. We mentioned this earlier. This one let you build an asset from your discard pile, which was especially bad because there were a whole bunch of terrains being printed right after it. Well, not right after it, like 2 sets after it, but right after the ban. And terrains specifically replace all other terrains. So the ability to cheat a terrain in during your turn means you get to get rid of any terrains your opponent has and also guarantee that yours will be there when you need it, which is not how terrains are supposed to work.
No. And law-wise, I don't think Jiro's supposed to summon a whole terrain.
No. So this card was banned for that, but we now have Dramatic Slash. Dramatic Slash is a 4/5 rather than a 4/4, but it's the same block, the same powerful. It's a charge and weapon again. It fixes the top card of your deck slightly rather than readying a foundation, and it doesn't draw you a card, so it's worse in that regard. But the big thing here is that it now requires momentum rather than a card in hand to build an asset. This means it's gated behind either you paying the cost to gain momentum via some effect, or via actually having hit with an attack on a previous turn.
Yep.
This makes it a far worse card because it's realistically not going to support turn 2 aggro at all, and this makes it actually fair.
Oh yeah, I guess so.
It also means that you've got to give up a little bit of that powerful if you want to gain the asset.
True.
Whereas cards in hand were practically free sometimes if you drew too many foundations on an attack turn.
True.
Then we have, this one's a little bit more of a stretch because it's split over 2 cards, but Crow and Frog Takedown.
Yeah.
Crow and Frog Takedown had 2 abilities. It let you ready a thing if you were Asui or Tokoyami. Nobody cared about that much. The big one was that first enhance there. This doesn't count towards progressive difficulty for the rest of this turn. It was being played in aggro decks for that alone. I know, because it was banned for making Tokoyami too good, but also my All Might True form that I was playing during the tournament where Tokoyami was too good was playing 3 or 4 of these in a turn every game, and then using them to take down Tokoyamis and similar before even starting its turn, really.
With Tokoyami, you get small bonuses on every attack, so this becomes crazy, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't even Tokoyami doing it, though. My All Might True form made this an 8 damage attack that doesn't count. You get to play 3 or 4 of it at the start of your turn 2, and then you go in for the actual attack.
And then alleyway ambush. That is what All Might True form, but...
No, sadly, you didn't have a set 2 symbol, otherwise I absolutely would have played that.
Yeah.
But as was, you're threatening 24 damage before you even start your turn. This card was stupid. And now we have a way to bring it back, though it's a lot more specific. Whirling Needle, we already looked at this. It's not a huge amount of damage on its own, but it's always considered the first attack, or rather, enhances consider it the first attack. Combine that with abandoning all inhibitions. Hit this as an enhance. If this is your first attack this turn, it doesn't count towards progressive. So between the 2 of them, for each Whirling Needle doesn't count as long as you can ready abandoning all inhibitions.
Ah, right. It's a foundation, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very blue foundation. It's not obvious, I know.
Yeah, it looks very action-like.
Yeah, but the character who's best at readying this, I think, is probably going to be Toga 2. It's the one reason you still want to play Toga 2 is because she has this response twice per turn after you flip 1 or more momentum, ready 1 foundation that's not been ready this combat phase. So you ready abandoning inhibitions, and normally that'd be useless, but because you can have 2 first attacks in a turn with Twirling Needle, suddenly it's not.
Okay.
So that's that. And that's all the My Hero cards that have been banned that have spiritually come back here. But we have a few older cards as well. Next up, we have Summer Heat. Summer Heat has 2 abilities, both of which are static. One of them lets you ready it after your opponent's ready step, which is what the card, what's it called?
Nice Try.
Thank you. Nice Try isn't busted. Nice Try is perfectly fine. I mean, it's good. It's real good, but you are paying a 2 difficulty for it, so it's kind of justified. Summer Heat, also you're paying a 2 difficulty for it. It doesn't even have a block mod, so you can't block with it.
Yeah.
So likewise, that ability on it wasn't busted. What was busted, as it turns out, was after you play this card, draw a card.
It just replaces itself. It's a free card.
Yeah. It's a free foundation. It means that, let's say you're playing a 4 or 5-hander, because they did used to be 4-handers. You play this, suddenly you can play 5 foundations in a turn.
Oh, yeah.
It was insane for low hand size characters, and it was pretty good in everyone else. Especially as, let's say you're going into turn 2 and you've not drawn enough attacks, you can play this to fish for another one.
It makes your attack ratio higher, so to say, without actually lowering the check ratio.
And without lowering the number of foundations you get to play either.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why Summer Heat was busted. That's why Summer Heat was banned. We've got it coming back in the form of Ryukyu. Ryukyu says after she plays a card, if it has no abilities, she draws a card and may add a card from her hand to her momentum. Ignore the momentum part for a moment. That just makes it even better because that's an optional extra.
Yeah.
When you play a blank foundation, you get to draw a card. When you block with a blank foundation, you get to draw a card. It is Summer Heat again, if she gets any blank foundations to go with her. And this time, it's a 0 diff, a 6 check, and a +1 high block.
And in retro, at least, there's more than 4 Summer Heats you can run then.
Yeah. If you go retro, there's even more of them. But just this number 10 Pro Hero is a vastly superior version of Summer Heat, as long as Ryukyu is in the stage and ready, which is absolutely crazy. Ryukyu is not okay. Pure and simple.
No, that's Summer Heat the character.
Yeah. And the problem is she's only going to get worse as they start printing support for her in future sets.
Wait, that also makes all the blank attacks summer heat.
The blank attacks are not quite summer heat on the grounds that they're a higher difficulty. They're attacks. You have to wait till turn 2 to play them. And also a lot of attacks, they draw a card anyway these days. But no foundation just says when you play this, draw a card. Because that would be busted. That would be summer heat.
Is there a response that blanks a card as you play it?
There is an action which blanks a card before you play it in Juvenile Mayhem.
Could make other foundations also be summer heats. And then
possibly,
they get
but you'd be using
effects
2 cards to draw 1 card, so it still wouldn't be good for you.
True.
But yeah, UQ is busted. UQ is way more busted than Capture Evil-Doers. Then moving
I suspect
on,
they're going to cancel her at some point anyway, and then we just lost Capture Evil-Doers and Ryukyu.
Yeah. Then moving on, we have Lord Raptor, who was banned not because he was too good, but because he was NPE. And that was the first time I came across NPE as a term. They were handing out little slips with tournament results saying, did you have a negative player experience? Specifically to judge whether Lord Raptor was okay. Lord Raptor is a 7-hander with 19 health, which is perfectly reasonable, but the first line of text, his static, shows why he's a problem. Your cards with Flash gain Breaker 2. So
just Breaker 2 everything, yeah.
Yeah, you Breaker 2 everything by playing a whole load of Flash attacks. So he is uninteraction the deck and also stop your opponent the deck. Breaker 2 wasn't quite as bad in standard at the time, but I mean, it was still pretty bad.
Yeah.
Add on to that, once per turn, after a flash attack's played, your opponent destroys a committed foundation. So if he blocks and Breaker 2s, it's actually Breaker 3, essentially. And one of those foundations doesn't commit, it just goes away completely. And also, he can blow stuff up when he attacks, and people hate debuild, just with an absolute passion. People will curse you out for playing Mineta.
I've never had anyone complain about Bakugo that way. Oh, the opponents, debuilding the opponent, you mean?
Debuilding the opponent, not you. Nobody cares about you debuilding yourself.
Or if you're in deadlock and they want to use a juicy deadlock ability, they do.
Okay, yeah, actually people do a bit, but you know what I mean.
yeah, but that's
also has response, remove 2 cards from your discard pile. After you play an attack, it gets +2 speed or +2 damage. So just gets to buff all his attacks as well, while the opponent can't debuff them because they don't have an enhance step, and most players play around their big enhances.
True.
So he was just, I buff my stuff, you can't interact, I'll destroy your stuff, I'll shut down your turn, deal with it.
That does sound like an NP.
Now, when I played against him, my character just gave +5 damage to every attack at the cost of having to keep 2 specific cards in hand in a 5-hander. So I was just like, okay, here's this 1 attack. Oh, you take it. Okay, you're at 9 now. All I needed was 2 attacks to hit to kill. But there was no way of knowing how close I was to landing that second attack ever. And personally, I didn't hate that, but I can see why people did. So yeah, he was an awfully designed character just from enjoying the game standpoint. I can see why he got banned for that, but I don't think he was actually busted.
Yeah.
And then, this is a bit cheeky on my part, the version of him that actually did come back definitely wasn't busted. This is Lord Raptor 1, because while Lord Raptor did get a spiritual successor, it wasn't this Lord Raptor. It was in fact 1, who is the same character basically, but with different symbols, as Edge Shot. Edge Shot has, after you review an attack, your non-attack cards get -1 difficulty and -1 to their block modifiers till the start of your next turn. And after you review a non-attack card, your attacks get +1 speed and damage until the start of your next turn. He then, much like Lord Raptor, has a whole bunch of support which lets him review additional cards, essentially, during his turn. And then his teammates, the other lurkers, do that as well. So
your opponent would always know whether you're doing a foundation building and blocking turn or a attack turn.
Yeah, it does give a lot of heads up to your opponent. But I mean, it's just real cool as far as I'm concerned, because it's Lord Raptor, but with more support. And it's not the busted Lord Raptor, it's the fun Lord Raptor. So
wait, if you can review multiple cards in a turn with his support, that means that they stack, I guess?
Yes, they do. You can't stack the responses more than once per instance of review, even if you review multiple cards at a time. But let's say you review an attack and an attack at the same time with Titan Cliff, you can respond with both responses once.
Oh, yeah.
And also, if you just play multiple instances of abilities that make you review, you can just stack a whole load of plus speed and damage.
Oh, negative difficulty foundations. Nice.
Or that works too, yes. He's a good character. I like him a lot, but he is fair.
True.
Because he's not a reprint of the problematic Lord Raptor at all. Then we have the cards I think should have been banned, but never were.
Speaking of problematic.
Yep, Moon Ritual Dance. It's a 4 difficulty attack. So back in the days when you could attack on turn 1, if you went second, you could pretty much guarantee this on your first turn. It's got enhance, add 1 card with a difficulty of X or less you could normally play. Your discard pile to your hand card pool or stage. X equals the number of characters in your stage.
Just add it to anyway.
So
you feel like.
X is always at least 1. You can always build, and you can pick a 0 diff or a 1 diff, so there's a whole load of stuff in your deck. Basically, you go second, you review a foundation with 1 difficulty or less, you play Moon Ritual Dance, you commit your character if you have to, and then you build the foundation with this so you don't even miss the build.
It's actually a bit back alley Haymaker.
It's a bit back alley Haymaker, but it's better. Because back alley Haymaker only gets 0 diffs. This, by default, gets a 1.
Oh, yeah.
But in addition to that, it's a 7 speed, so it's pretty much guaranteed to hit at that stage in the game. And it's only 2 damage, so if your opponent does block it, they're going to feel bad about it.
Yep.
Then it's gauge 2, which is if this does 2 or more damage, so if your opponent doesn't block it, then you get to go through your entire deck and discard pile, find a copy of your character, and put it straight into play. So the next one's even better, and it has discard 1 momentum. This attack gets +1 damage for each character in your stage, and you draw a card. So if you hit with 1, suddenly the next one's 4 damage, gauges even on a partial, and you draw a card to replace it. Oh, and it builds a 2 diff. So this is pretty crazy already. But the other thing to consider with this is character stacking was defined a little differently back then. It was a character with the same name, not a character with the same name and number, which means you could play a 6 hand size Weetzel with the ability to draw cards and then stack this version on top. So suddenly you're a basically 8-hander with the effects of a 4-hander who gets to pick back up their attacks, play them again, make your opponent discard momentum and cards every time you hit, make everything essentially a throw. It was so busted that even in retro, half my deck got banned when I played this. This was a turn 1 kill. Yeah. I was winning entire 2 out of 3 rounds in 3 turns. Yeah. Not entirely consistently, but I did it twice in the same tournament. So yeah, this deck was absolutely through the roof not okay. And yet, somehow, they never touched Moon Ritual Dance, the one card that really set it all off. So they brought it back.
Of course they did.
Here's Tasty Rift. Now, Tasty Rift does slightly more damage, so it's harder to negate it with damage debuffs, but it is a bit slower. However, it's easier to stack counters to uptick the amount that it can fetch from discard pile. Also, it can fetch the second copy of Battle Resolve, which didn't exist at the time of Moon Ritual Dance, allowing you to give it +3 speed with that. So you can make this an 8 speed even.
Huh.
And yeah, it's a high rather than a low. A lot of people say that low is the least common block zone, and low was the least common block zone back at the time of Moon Ritual Dance. But actually, I find high is the least common in my hero, so it's the equivalent of the low that it used to be.
Yeah, high and low have definitely swapped. Also, a lot of big finishers are high.
And then if this deals damage, you draw 3 cards, gain 3 applause counters to uptick for the next one, and discard down to your printed hand size. So essentially, you just replace it and filter your hand a bunch. So okay, maybe you don't quite get to gauge, but you still get to hit, get a great on-hit effect, stack up a bunch of counters, build some stuff for essentially free. It's an attack and a foundation in one. It upticks itself to build more stuff. It can potentially stack characters with low difficulty, like, say, twice. It's not quite Moon Ritual Dance, but it's insanely close to Moon Ritual Dance, and if your opponent ever goes into deadlock, it has powerful 7.
Just to top it off.
Just to top it off. That's rarely going to matter, but when it does, that's a lot of damage. This is a very speedy attack if you build that Battle Resolve, so it might even get through deadlock.
That's sort of successor to the discard momentum +1 damage for each character.
Yeah. Now it's just discard momentum +7 damage.
But the opponent needs to be at deadlock, so yeah, I think it's still a debuff.
Yeah. Well, the lack of draw a card is the debuff there. But this draws a card on hit, so it doesn't even matter. And the final one, I just wanted to talk about this because it's neat.
This character was banned?
No, I'm not saying this character was banned. This character wasn't even good.
Oh.
I'm just saying it's worth bringing this character up because they got a very, very faithful reprint. And I wanted to talk about them while I was talking about old cards being reprinted, even though this character never was banned. This is, officially this character is named Bass to go with Rockman, Roll, Blues, all of those from Mega Man. But personally, I like to call this guy Bass, short for Badass, because he is definitely the most badass, cool, edgy character in certainly the common Mega Man games that I know.
He's Shadow the Mega Man.
Yeah, he's Mega Man's Shadow the Hedgehog for sure. Okay, he has response after your safe attack gets a damage penalty, it gets +3 damage.
Yep.
And enhance once per turn, discard one safe card from your card pool. Your opponent adds one card from their hand to their card pool. Atsuki Bakugo 4 here has enhance once per turn, discard one card from your card pool. If it's your turn, your rival discards one card. So they don't get the additional progressive difficulty, but you do still get to clear your own card pool, and you can do this on both players' turns still. But he also has the response, which is the exact same response, but now it's Fury rather than Safe, because Safe doesn't exist in My Hero. And the nice thing about that is Fury is a lot more prevalent, and as a 630 character, he has 4 more health than Bass/Base ever did.
But wait a second, they took a character from Mega Man set, which is one of the lowest power levels, and then they made the ability slightly worse still?
So the original Mega Man set was definitely one of the lowest power levels. This is the third Mega Man set where things were slightly better. Bass/Base did actually put up a fight. He just was never good. But I suspect people were concerned at Jasco/UVS Games about this character coming back, because one of the last Mega Man cards they brought back was absolutely meta-destroying. One with Nature never did anything in Standard, and yet in My Hero was absolutely dominant.
I mean, this feels even worse in this meta, this Bakugo.
Bass/Base, I suspect they were worried for the same reason, but yeah. This guy does feel worse in this meta, and do you know why this guy's worse in this meta?
Please tell me.
It's partially because he doesn't have Earth, so he doesn't have access to all the damage debuff abilities.
Yeah.
But it's partially also just because there aren't that many damage debuff abilities that remove small amounts of damage in My Hero in general.
True.
So actually, this response does very little for him outside of what he can do with his own kit. I'll be fair, his own kit has a few nice pieces, but I just don't think it makes up for the fact that he doesn't have any other support, really.
No. Even when you're going for a build where the opponent just keeps discarding what's in their hand, there's so little support for that too. I mean, a lot of it is just conditional, and it's like really hard to make consistent. So.
Well, the thing about discard is that if you discard your opponent's hand, their block modifier and your speed just don't matter anymore. It is the easiest way to guarantee that your attacks go through.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm
saying because of that, they have been very, very afraid to print any good discard.
Yeah, then don't reprint his character.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like having bad discard is fine, but it's too bad.
Yeah.
Like this character, there is nothing wrong with the discard on this character. This character is perfectly fine in that regard. The problem is, discard one card is not huge. It needs to be coupled with more discard for payoff. And basically all the other discard in this entire format is terrible.
Also, the My Hero format has so much draw.
Yeah, it does. It has less draw on defense than it has draw on offense. But even then, it does have a fair amount of both.
You just block with Rejuvenating Smash and Bakugo won't matter.
Yeah, as long as you can hold Rejuvenating Smash, his entire enhance is null and void.
Yep.
So much as I like this character coming back, he is not good.
No.
I mean, he's so not good that he's not fun to play.
Yeah, the worst kind of
which is quite impressive, because Bass/Base was on the edge of that, but he was on the edge of that in Standard, where power levels were so much higher.
It's crazy how much format can affect a card like that.
Yeah, but it's also crazy how it can go both ways, because one with Nature was nothing, and Bass/Base was almost something, and yet Bass/Base is now nothing, and one with Nature is also nothing, but it's nothing because it was banned because it was so stupidly overpowerful, meta defining, awful to face, etc. So yeah, it's gone both ways, the way that the meta has changed the power levels of things.
True.
And this guy's fallen a victim of people being overcautious, I guess.
I mean, even clearing his own card pool isn't that great. Like, Bakugo 1 is better at that because it's not limited to once per turn.
Yeah, I mean, he's limited to being blocked, but even so, you are right. Your opponent will probably block you more than once in a turn.
Yeah.
And I mean, if they don't, you can punish that very heavily. So yeah, I'm really disappointed. I really wanted to play this guy because it's Bass/Base again, and I love that guy, but this just ain't it.
Nah, it's not worth it.
So there you go, everyone. That's the bans in Errata. It's the old cards that have come back. It's a whole load of cool stuff that we've talked about.
Yeah.
And then one very sad one at the end.
We ended on a downer.
Yeah, there has been a little bit of other Errata, though, that I would like to go over in a separate video.
Sure.
So I'm sure you'll see that soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.